What's happening, everyone? Today is a glorious day, not only because the weather is good. It's we got PulseChain Validator AMA number 55555 coming your way. Today we have Gamma DevOps. He's decided to join us on this one. Should be fun. If you haven't seen the previous Validator AMAs, I did quite a bit, and he's did a ton of content, a lot of stuff I learned from before as well, especially when I got started in this. I think I was doing Ethereum testnet stuff in January, I want to say. I started getting to prepare for PulseChain, and then sort of, man, there's a lot to it. I'm glad we have a few people in the community who are here, willing to answer questions, willing to help you in one way or another. So I'm glad Gamma could join us today. Let me say hi to the chat real quick, and we will jump into it. Warning, there will be a lot of technical discussion today, but feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll go through them as well, as many as we can. Go for probably hour, 90 minutes today, something like that. Mr. Crypto JSY, looking forward to the stream. Yeah, should be good. Appreciate it. Red Squirrel, appreciate you here for the algos. I know you're probably sleeping right now, but you can catch the replay game, like you said. TDS Lane, I believe you write some scripts and automations, so welcome. Good to have you. Always appreciate people who are providing support, trying to get people on the Validator bandwagon, and it's not for everyone. We'll get into that too. Validating it is not for everyone. You need to have certain set of skills and certain amount of PLS and a certain dedication to not giving up. Perseverance, one of Richard's favorite quotes, right? What's up, Justice? Welcome. Hex Element, let's go. Pseudo approved stream. I know. I want to see some more pseudo chat. Pseudo, make me a sandwich. So any more pseudo nerds in the audience? 2 more weeks. Never know. Don't know if you're talking about the stream or PulseChain, but so close. What's up, Xerox Will? Welcome. Hexbear in the house. What's happening, man? What's happening? Gamma DevOps is here. He's in the green room. Just had a warm-up conversation. Godfather J6. Howdy. Welcome, man. Welcome. JD the Hexagon. Welcome, JD. Crypty Girl. What's happening, Crypty Girl? Are you getting the validator going? Let me know. I didn't know that. That'd be awesome, though. Just fired up the validator of the day. Here we go. I like to see people firing up validators all over the world. Got to get those little heat maps all over the world, like Jim, Funny Jim was talking about the other day. Anyways, without further ado, welcome to the show, Gamma DevOps.
Hey, how you doing?
And we're live. How's it going, man?
Yay, we made it.
Yeah. How's your day going so far? You answering enough questions? You tapping out?
Yeah, no. All day I wake up, I feel hyped for a PulseChain every day. Like I was saying earlier in the green room, I drop my kids off at school, and then I'm in it all day doing whatever I do, and a lot of that time is in Telegram, or like I spent some time in Twitter Spaces this morning, in a PulseChain Twitter Space with Tangent and a bunch of people, like 200 people, and talking about PulseChain. And nice. Then VCs and answering questions in just Pulse Dev, PulseChain. I don't know. Like I kind of just lurk in the chats and see if there's any technical questions that might need answering, if I'm aware. And then I try and field some questions.
You're like, just ask Jesse, but like just ask Gamma.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, then I get lots and lots of DMs from people, and then obviously Twitter questions. And I mean, it's like I'm all over I'm just wherever people are. I've been doing this for this identity I've had for like almost 2 years now. Wow. And I was originally it took me about 6 months or whatever. I was an admin in all the chats, but then I stepped back from that role, and then now I'm doing other things. But I'm like 100% focused on PulseChain at this point.
100% uptime and PulseChain. I like it, man. I'm with you. I've seen you, so much, man. Sounding in the green room, such a thankless job. I know you get a lot of thanks, but it's just for the amount of effort and like just stamina of like sitting there answering a lot of the same questions over and over and over. And just man, we really appreciate you doing it, helping people in the community. It's not easy. Yep. And it's a lot of time. It takes a lot of time, a lot of consciousness. You could be doing anything else, but you're helping a lot of people. So definitely want to tell you.
I mean, so that. Like my Twitter is twitter.com Gamma DevOps. And then my educational content is, I posted in the chat, but it's Gamma DevOps Substack.com. And that's where all my tutorial videos are.
Substack is great.
I mean, the repetitious problems and like, hey, how do you do this? I can do a video and I publish it there, and then I just direct people to my Substack, or I'll do tweets about it. And mostly Substack is where I'm thinking about doing a wiki where it's like a community wiki where people like yourself or other people that do technical stuff could like post their guides and it can be updated over time. Um, so I'm like, okay, how do you form that? Or do I just do a website for myself and just do a couple pagers on my personal domain for this identity, which is like kamadevops.com. And I'm thinking about it. But there's a Substack and everything's on Substack. So I just stick with Substack. It's easy. It's
Yeah,
already
yeah.
there.
I've watched a lot of your stuff on Substack, especially when I started learning, started deep diving. Like, how does this stuff work? There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of like just there's plenty of people who can set up a validator, especially when we have guides and scripts and stuff these days. It's only getting easier in that way. But to actually understand what's going on the blockchain, understand what your server is actually doing and how the stuff works together, that took me a while. Now, I've been in tech for a long time. That took me a while to wrap my head around. Like, oh, okay, this is how this works. This is why you need this. This is all this stuff. So it's complicated.
I mean, so like a little bit of history for your viewers for me is I started in 2010 learning like Objective-C, got a Mac, learning how to write an app, and that morphed into I don't really want to write apps, but then I started hosting blogs and forums on websites, and then none of those really like became popular or any. No one used it, but then I learned how to host the software, configure Apache, Nginx, right? PHP, Rust. I mean, like, HTML, right? Websites, even though I'm not like a web developer, more of the back end stuff, Linux, and then around like the early 2000s, companies like Bluehost, I think it was my first one where I actually got limited root access to a server. And then I started learning about like DigitalOcean. I found out about DigitalOcean, and now I got root access to servers, spin them up, drop them down. I mean, I can start configuring them, virtual private servers. And that was like 2013, 2014, where I'm configuring stuff. And then in 2017, I was in graduate school for my MBA, and I learned about Ethereum in my like last year. So I started learning Ethereum nodes. And so I learned about Ethereum. I learned about Bitcoin. I've worked Bitcoin like as a test net. You don't be taking the Bitcoin, like basically what PulseChain is doing, but as like a test net. And I just forked Bitcoin, made its own genesis, and then had a running network, more like an operational test net, basically. I did that. It took me 3 weeks to do that, but that was like 2018, somewhere around there. Early in Hex, following Richard, early days, 2018, before Richard launched, Hex in 2019. Part of that crew under my actual like real name back then, actually. So that same identity is not the same. So I'm a day one Hexkin with a different identity in Telegram, so nobody like really links me to this account to that one, because I was actually going under my real name at that point. But I was there a year before Hex launched, and then I kind of dropped off for about a year doing other things. Came back under this identity. I mean, I guess it was a year and a half ago or something. It was a while ago, when PulseChain really started getting traction. I created this identity, and I've been using it ever since. I became an admin in the PulseChain, Hex, all those telegrams, even though I stepped back from that role. I mean, 9 months ago or something. And now I'm full-time PulseChain doing stuff, some of which I can't really talk about, but I can definitely answer a lot of validator questions. I can answer a lot of community questions on what's happening with PulseChain, what's public, what's, what I can answer about it. And that's basically what I do all day. And then I do a bunch of stuff I can't talk about. So, not to be elusive or anything,
I like
but
it.
right. It's
No,
I do work all day, and part of that is actually communicating with the community, like I've been doing for 2 years for free, just giving my time to the community, doing this YouTube channel as like the hobby, basically. Because I was doing it for 2 years, and I don't mind doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think we have pretty similar background as far as the tech side, and following Richard since 2017, CFD token, all in,
Oh yeah.
all that stuff. And
I actually
it
didn't
was,
like CFD token. Don't tell Richard
yeah,
though. I didn't
it
really
was,
like it, but we didn't do it, so I guess it's okay.
I don't think he liked it as much either. Probably why we
Mhm.
didn't end up doing it. Yeah. I always thought it was like, when Hex came along, it was
It
like,
was a good
clearly
one.
the value proposition is clear in this one. The other one, it was like, there's a market for it, but it's not nearly as big as a CD. You could say that.
Oh
It's
yeah, I
more
love Hex,
structural.
and when because Hex launched with a two or 3 week, like 14-day window where it was live, waiting for it to turn on, so you could review the code. And I know Solidity enough to review contracts for myself. I'm not an auditor. I'm not hiring myself out as I'm not. You're not getting the gamma stamp of approval for your token contract, but I mean, I
Gamma
can review it
Police.
for myself, and I can see if it does what you say it does, and I can see all the admin keys, and I can review it that way. Personal consumption. But that's part of your due diligence. If you're slightly technical, everything came back great. I love Hex. I've been in it forever. So more people should learn Solidity, and more people should learn the tech side.
Yeah. So not a PulseChain dev, but very close to. It sounds like very close. It feels like at least you're closest to
I
developers.
mean, my
than a
username
lot
is
of people.
DevOps, so that gives you a clue to like to my focus. I mean,
I don't think anyone knows what DevOps means. So,
well, sure, you can
yes,
fill in the
I do,
blank
but
then.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I mostly run
Yeah.
servers, and I've been doing it for years. It's what I'm interested in. So I love running clients. I running infrastructure. One of the things I was doing before during this whole PulseChain development process under 2B was RPC. I was running a public RPC for a long time, although I shut it down in October. Because PulseChain never came out, and so I shut down that service that I was thinking about hosting. Now I'm doing other things, but then that taught me a lot about providing API services to a public community. So, I mean, I could run a public RPC that could handle trillions of calls a day, but I would need to fund it somehow. So I'm not planning on doing a public RPC, but I can definitely do. What I do is I help teams with that kind of stuff. I do kind of consulting, right? Of like helping with Erigon, helping with RPCs, helping with security, kind of like short-term, temporary, contracts. Mostly just consulting. You know what I mean? With some PulseChain teams I'm working with, part time. When they need me, I get on a phone call. That kind of thing.
Nice. Yeah, my background's specialty is security, so that's been interesting to try to wrap my head around a lot of the different concepts. Like I know, securing a validator, securing, know the local side, the firewalls, all that, but like the blockchain side, what's exposed, how the services work. I want to dig into the RPC stuff a little bit with you later on as well, just to figure out like the different nuance there. But there's definitely a lot of security stuff. I plan on maybe next week or so I'll do a security AMA as well because I got
I mean, so
up
you
with
have
some good stuff
like you said, firewalls. And then, obviously you have password, like you wouldn't use password access to a server, remote server, right? SSHN. Then you have I like to use Nginx. So you have rate limiting with Nginx, and then you have you use your firewalls, and then you have I go through Cloudflare, so you have your DDoS protection. Cloudflare is the service that I use. I mean, obviously there's AWS, you can use Elastic load balancers and such. But the product that I'm most familiar with is a Cloudflare. So you have an origin server that's serving the data, has a client on it, and then Cloudflare. You route everything through Cloudflare. So their DDoS network, right? Their edge service takes care of a lot of that. But then there's a particular way you have to set that up so it functions well. And then even at the origin side, on the server side, like DigitalOcean, not to go over people's heads, but DigitalOcean will actually their defaults for TCP connections is like very, very low. So even if with a very small amount of load, you'll get 500 errors, which just means that the connections are terminated before they even started, basically, because they're already limited. And then what you have to do is go into the server and you have to open up on the Linux side, right? You go through Nginx, and you have to do some minor configurations there. Then you go into the Linux config, and then you do some connections there, and you just allow for the server to mostly open it up, because
It'd be nice if
don't
there
want
wasn't
people,
a
right? They're a virtual private server network, so they don't want people just having a server that's completely wide open. But if you know what you're doing and you need that, then you can do that. But the defaults are pretty low, relatively speaking. But that doesn't impact like end user or the validator doesn't need any of that. Like I'm talking public at scale RPC endpoint with like 50,000 users. Yeah, probably almost nobody on this call needs to know anything like that. But
yeah,
it's a thing.
Cloudflare it's interesting. The pay for protection thing that became a huge industry and a huge market in the last few years because of people targeting different systems and hey, let's do this redirection stuff, let's do this verification, let's do this different strategies to try to mitigate them making your server go down. Become super popular, and I would have guessed that a few years ago.
It's like the basic rate is like $20 a month, and then you pay for origins. I mean, so you $20-$30 a month, and you get access to their network. So I'm like, I could do the same thing with Nginx, but then I don't need to, because I can just pay them like $20 a month, and I get the better benefit. So, but that's a public RPC kind of a thing. That it's one of the things that I help people like teams and such navigate a little bit. I self-taught myself almost everything I know. So almost everything I know is trial and error. Google. Want to know something, learn about it, figure it out, go on to the next thing. Over 10 years of that, and then eventually you come out the other side knowing some stuff.
You bang your head on the keyboard enough, you become smarter. That's true.
I've done that.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say too, because I haven't been on stream since I released the Grafana and the monitoring scripts. So on the post a link in the chat. If anyone wants to, let's see, let me scroll down. Yeah, so I've got instructions and a automation script. Anyone wants to use that so you got to run the setup validator script first. So if you already set it up, with another script or another guide or whatever, I'd recommend if you're going to use this script, use the validator setup script first, because it kind of relies on a couple things, because it edits your service files and all that. So this is you basically just run the script, and then you just need to go and connect to your Grafana instance however you want to. For example, you can do the more secure way of using SSH, and then add your dashboards. And I'll be adding some more. I saw somebody release some more dashboard stuff. I know some of them were working for ETH, but not so much for PulseChain. I think some people did some stuff around that. I've got a couple things to look at on that too.
Is it JAXA that published just the JSON file for the dashboard?
Somebody did. Yeah, I saw on Telegram somebody did.
I saved that one because it's I already have Prometheus and Grafana working, but the dashboard I have sucks, so I'm going to use that.
Yeah, I got 3 different ones.
I think it was JAXA.
I've imported 3 different ones, and one of them wasn't working. I think that's the one that person forked and updated it. So yeah, that's on Telegram. I got a note to go through that and probably add it to here as well. Also, somebody asked about video walkthroughs. Gamma's got a ton of his stuff on Substack and YouTube as well. These are the recent ones I went through to walk through this code and doing various stuff. It's not 100%. I'm not typing all the commands there. I'm just kind of showing you, walking through the code, telling you how it works so you actually understand what the commands do, and then doing a couple demos here too. And then, so with each one has a reset script. So if you mess up or need to debug it or whatever, there's reset validator, which all you got to do is read the code first, understand that it's going to delete all the stuff you did with the script, and then turn that to true. Turn this to true if you want to actually use it. Otherwise, it'll say this and tell you to do that. And there's one for the monitoring. Shit, not that one. Monitoring as well.
My own automated scripts to deploy use Docker. And it's super simple to just use Docker to build Docker using what's provided in the repos and then run them. So it takes actually less code to do that.
I've used Docker a lot for this. I wanted to, I don't know, I like the different security advantages for using Docker if you use Docker correctly and not open everything up. I forget what the flag is. Privilege mode. Never use privilege mode with Docker if you don't want like all the protections to be removed and all that stuff. Yeah. Do you know about that?
Well, I'm actually a Docker noob. But the networking thing is something I pounded my head against for like a day. And what I'm using is because I'm used to running binaries, and I know the security of the server. So I'm not using Docker security. I'm using my own knowledge of host security. So actually, the net host flag, instead of creating its own network, like a lot of guys are like, you create like a PulseChain network, and then you're running the two clients on the PulseChain network. Actually, just use hyphen net equals host, and it just removes the pain of me trying to um, fight Docker basically. Now,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a bunch of different flags and different things that have consequences with them. But the one you should avoid more than anything is just what I mentioned, is the privilege flag concerns. Basically, it removes all the restrictions and makes it very easy
Yeah, I don't even
to
ever use
attain.
that because I'm running
Good.
Docker, and it's the network flag is just not using Docker's network, but it's using the host network, and then everything works fine for me. It's fine, you know.
From Jecta here again, I haven't used Docker with the clients. All the scripts I use don't use Docker. I know David's guide and automation stuff does use Docker, and a lot of people are using that. Sounds like you're using Docker for the clients as well in your setup.
Well, I mean, my personal validator runs binaries. I use the Lighthouse binary, so I build it with Make, and then Geth. I build the binaries. Actually, I've been building the binary for Geth for like 6 years now. So I started out doing that. So I actually didn't even touch Docker until I started trying to figure out how to automate the process. And it was easier just to build them on the virtual private servers to automate the process with Docker. And also, since a majority of the community is focused on using Docker, since I'm building with Docker and I'm using Docker in my own builds, then it's easy for me just to share those and test things out.
Yeah, it's good for. I mean, the DevOps side, definitely Docker makes things repeatable and all that.
Yeah.
So there's advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah,
Who knows? My script.
It needs to be reproducible, and then what I like is since I'm building my own Docker containers, I can take whatever branch I need, and then I can just rebuild with that and do some testing and such. Building the binaries becomes kind of a pain in the ass.
Ju Young, shout out to Ju Young from HSIWatch.com. If you're running a validator, can you also use it as an RPC node for in-house application? Is it safe? What's the safest way to do it? That's what I wanted to talk to you about too, is RPC security stuff you should know for that. Me and Ju Young have been talking, and I mean, it looks like you just add a couple more flags to the clients to enable, and of course, open on your firewall, RPC port and stuff. What are the nuance around that?
I mean, I wouldn't make a validator publicly accessible, especially on Mainnet. It's a security problem.
So why is that? What are the risks?
I mean, so you don't want people calling your server, because you're giving them, you know what I mean? It's just if you make it publicly accessible, if you don't configure it correctly, like most people, they shouldn't be running like the Geth wallet. Here's the main concern that most people ran into, and the biggest concern that a lot of people have with running Geth is if you give it your personal API and then you open all the flags up for the APIs, then if you're using Geth as the actual wallet, then they could drain your wallet. Well, like nobody's doing that now. So that's a concern back when Ethereum started like 6 years ago.
Right.
But as a validator, I don't believe you should use it as a public RPC service. Now, if it's a private service, like I would use my own validator that I have here under my desk to connect my own MetaMask wallet to it and to run transactions through, for sure. If you run it on a local network where it's not publicly accessible, right, on your own local LAN, then you're probably okay.
Well, you were saying before that you were running a public RPC service, right?
So like a public accessible, you have a URL and you're giving an RPC out to like you, and you're like, hey, no problem, you can use my public RPC. That should be a validator. Like, really, that should be just a full node.
Okay,
it can be a validator. I mean,
It can't. So yeah, so it can be. I mean, yeah, validator node. But like, when would it be useful to do that? And since I know what you're talking about, the attacks of I think it's if your wallet's unlocked. There was a few years
those are
ago.
flags that nobody uses anyway. Those are concerns that are already like way in the past, basically. And not these aren't concerns if you're using MetaMask or anything. But
So if somebody did want to do RPC service on their validator, like what first of all, why would they want to do that? What advantage is it to let people use yours versus whoever else is running RPC? The PulseChain devs running RPC. Maybe we get like an Infura clone through Alex from building data center stuff. Maybe we get it from Richard. What are the advantages and like what?
well,
Yeah.
if you're running that, and then you could get DDoS, and you get flooded, and now your validator is not functioning very well because somebody just used all your RAM up, and now you're supposed to be validating, and now you're being overloaded with TCP connections. Your mempool, even though you're sharing the mempool, if you're a public RPC, then all the transactions are flowing through your full node, and then your full node is dealing with all those transactions, even if they're invalid. So you should offload that to just a full node that will determine if transactions are valid and then pass them on to validators, which is what it's supposed to happen.
Okay.
So you have a transaction node or a regular full node. It as an RPC, it takes the transactions, puts it into its mempool, validates them as like real transactions, and then passes them on to the rest of the network. I mean, so there's products like MEV bot, like flash loans, and there's a lot of services, some services like internal house services that, so if you want to play the game of reordering transactions or censoring transactions or doing all that, then you could call directly into your validator. Then you're running special software as a middleware between your client mempool and the users, and now you're censoring transactions, and you're doing the MEV bot kind of situation where you're delegating the mempool, the transactions that you as a validator would process are being delegated to a third party service, but you're the validator and they're just a builder, so they're not even running the validator, they're just running the middleware anyway.
So
I'm just
it's not
saying,
like
in general, I would not recommend running a validator as a public RPC service. As a personal one, like you want to process your own transactions on your own server, yeah, go for it. For sure. You can do it right now. You set MetaMask localhost 8545 on your local validator that maybe you're running in your house, and you can run all your transactions through your own full node, and then they get propagated. If you're running your own validator, maybe they get processed by your validator, or maybe they get processed by some other validator on the network. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm talking about you have a reverse proxy URL. You're publicly saying, "Hey, everybody out there, you should like use my public RPC service." That shouldn't be a validator. That should be just a regular full node that's an RPC, and then you have like a separate server that's a validator.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
That's my personal recommendation. But they're all full nodes. They could even be archive nodes, technically. But and then a public RPC. Here's another fun fact. All these technical fun facts. If you're running a public RPC service, then you should probably run Erigon. It's actually better. But if you're running a validator, you should run Geth. There's a couple reasons for that, and all my reasons are going to be technical. So Geth, the database is like 800 gigabytes. The Erigon archive node, right? Geth as a default values are not an archive node. They're just regular full node. 800 gigabytes, 823 gigabytes or whatever. A little bit less, 800, say 800 gigabytes. Erigon default is an archive node, 2.6 terabytes. Now you can prune Erigon and make it much smaller, but then it still takes weeks and weeks to fully sync an Erigon full node. As a validator, you could be up in 12 to 24 hours, and then you deposit. Now you're, say, 2 days, is a good estimate to like the network. Like PulseChain is live. You get access to the mainnet clients Prism, Lighthouse, Geth, Erigon, they all get released at the same time. Whenever the RPC settings are released, then around that time you get the clients, right? It's not instantaneous. So you should run Geth as a validator. Then you can choose Prism or Lighthouse. It doesn't really matter which one. But there's some things with Erigon that make being a public RPC or an RPC that your team or you would use better, especially if you run like an app or something. So you have, it's an archive node by default for 2.6 terabytes, which is manageable amount of data, even though it takes 3 weeks or a month to sync up or whatever. Takes a very long time. And the APIs are, I've heard, and Alex from Hedron has said that he's done all this testing and he's, as a RPC, Erigon is better. I've heard from other people who are running public RPCs now, because I run RPCs as Geth. I never ran Erigon RPCs. So I haven't done the testing myself, but people who have done the testing, developers, legit people who I trust, have said Erigon is better as an RPC. So what I'm recommending people, if you're going to run like a RPC for your team or for some app that you're running, then you should run it as an Erigon. Erigon archive node as an RPC.
Why would a team run it? Why would you run a local one? It's like, just, are you talking about like on the same, you got it like a VPC in the cloud, and one of them is you're running your own node to make it faster transactions? Like, what are the advantages?
So you have the public RPC, like on testnet. I don't know if there's any rate limiting on testnet, but on mainnet, there's sure going to be rate limiting. On the public RPC, this is like the one that's like free for everybody to use. Like there's a certain threshold of transactions you're going to be able to do. And then if you go above that, then they're going to get cut off, right? That's what rate limiting is, right? For the audience. Being as simple as possible. And so if you're a team and you're running an app, then you probably need more throughput than what the public RPC is going to give you. So you just run your own full node. Well, you can run hopefully an Erigon archive node, put that behind a reverse proxy like Nginx. Then now you have your own personal RPC that you can make as many calls as you want. And then if you just increase your hardware, right? You fix your configurations. You even ask me like what I recommend or whatever, and I'm fine to get on a call. But it's actually not that hard, because if you're just a team, then you run a couple full nodes or Erigon archive nodes, let the load balanced, and it doesn't take a lot of work. And then now you can do unlimited transactions, and you're using your own hardware. But a lot of people, like on other networks, they talk about when the RPCs get overloaded and then your transactions get buggy, then everyone starts freaking out and they think, oh my God, the blockchain is faulty and it's like not working. I'm like, no, your connection to this one server or a couple servers is overloaded. So everybody's trying to push all their traffic through a couple servers. And so you are being put in line. And so you're not getting your transactions through your data, estimate gas errors, balance, right? You can't get the balance. Maybe MetaMask opens up and starts spinning, or like these are common problems you'll see. If you're connected to an RPC that's overloaded, you'll connect, but then it'll spin, or it'll query all the ERC20s that you have listed, that you've added, and then maybe all those are blank. Like they're spinning. They're like, and MetaMask seems like, why is MetaMask not working now? Well, because MetaMask is trying to get the data from the server, the full node, but since everybody else is trying to get the same data from the server, you're not getting it back, right? It's dropping, packets are dropping, all the connections are dropping. So you need to use a different RPC.
So that's a reason why you would run your own, is like, I don't want to deal with any of that stuff happening. If I run my own, then I can do transactions through it. Yeah,
if you're running a validator, then use the public RPC, and then just in your mind know, oh, the network, if that seems to be like a little buggy or whatever, then for sure, like tell somebody, like post in the chat, like, hey, this is buggy. Then we'll people will look at it. But you can just switch to your own full validator and then do your transaction. Because your validator is a full node that can process transactions, just like any other server on the network.
So you would just need, so interesting. I wonder if there's a, for example, if you're doing it in the cloud, then you would need to open it up. Is there in MetaMask, is there like authentication?
Well, what you can do is you can just tunnel in over SSH to that server, and then it will act like a local. It will act like a local SSH. I mean, so like the local host 8545, you're basically creating a tunnel between yourself and that server, and then when you do the drop down, localhost 8545, then it just links, it just connects with that local server, and so you're using it as a local host.
So basically this, and you can change it whatever port, you know, if you want
to change the port would be 8545. So you change that command with the in flag,
or sorry, this one.
The root, you that command, and then you change the name of the user, either root or Ubuntu or whatever the username is, the IP address, and then the port is going to be 8545.
85, and then local, whatever port you want it to be local.
Local, it would be 8545, and then the remote one would be 8545. And now you've tunneled into that server, and then
magic,
you do the drop down in MetaMask, and now you're using a remote server as a local host validator, as you're basically your own personal RPC service. It's very nice to have.
I'll be right back. You want to answer this question from Dev Huey? I'll be right back.
Sure. What do we got? Let me look at it. Here, let me see Dev Huey. Oh, okay. Will Gamma be providing an archive node as RPC querying service like PulseChain? Yeah, no, I'm not going to be running public infrastructure. I'm doing private consulting now. I actually run my own private RPCs, and I run my own private Erigon nodes. So, so me and my friends, people that I'm close with, then I can give them access to it, but it's not like a public service that's going to be available. I've actually extended an offer to one person to use my own personal thing, but it's not like a public service. So, but if you look at my tutorials, then you could totally learn how to run a full node, and then you could run your own. And then it's actually not that hard. And then the public PulseChain one is going to be fine. It's very performant, and will be scaled out for sure. And then like a bit, if you're a team, you need to run your own full node, archive node, RPC service, so that your own personal project isn't limited by any type of network demand that may come after PulseChain as goes live. So tell me, the question is like, am I going to run a public RPC service? Like, I'm not planning on it. I was thinking about doing that, but now I'm doing private consulting, and so I, private full nodes, private archive nodes, just my own personal consumption kind of a situation.
Gotcha. Just scrolling real quick. I know we had a couple questions, and then we'll go on to another topic. Alan says, does anyone know how much test pools locked away by the validators? Massive supply of the market, if that's the case.
Yeah, it's 32 million times the number of validators.
Right.
So let me see. I can answer this question. This is an easy
Can you do that quick maths? Quick math.
It is maths. Oh, say right now we have 5350. So 5350. Let me do the math here. 5350 times 32 million. Boom. 171 billion 200 million. So that's what's locked away right now.
Is?
The supply of Pulse is about 135 trillion ish.
Minus 90%.
Well, yeah, so you can subtract that larger entity. So yeah, but the actual total supply is like 135 trillion ish, give or take a trillion. And then the PulseX's supply is like 145 trillion, plus or minus a couple trillion. So, you know, what's a couple trillion between friends, right?
I was just thinking like minus the OA, that'd be fraction of a percent, not super significant even.
Well, I mean, so we can go into the tokenomics. You're talking about, okay, there's an entity that owns ish 90%, right? Then so the retail, like you and I people, right? I'm in that group too. I sacrifice for Pulse and PulseX. So we're part of the what is it, 10% or less retail that owns PLS. Those are the people who could run validators. Those are the people who could sell on the market. Those are the people who are going to be doing PulseX single side staking. Those are the people who are going to be doing all this stuff, right? That's like less than 10% of the total supply. And then I don't go into speculating what happens with the other 90%. But you know, there's like tons and tons of people talking about that. So, you know, like it used to be all constant, like 24/7 people speculating about that. But yeah, probably, you know, whatever happens with it.
Well, with the, I mean, the OA moves with Hex have been just that one Hedron deal, right? Like to actually do something active on the network.
Did it claim their Hedron?
And was there a sale wall that was there for a while to keep it from affecting Hex's price? I believe that was the deal.
I lost you. Oh no, we lost him.
No. I lost you, but you're back. You're back. We lost each other. We're back. Okay. There was I think there was a Hedron sell wall they did a while back too to protect the Hex price on that pair for a bit. But other than that, active moves, I don't know. I mean, is there what is a quick speculation? What is the 90% liquidity? Yeah,
some liquidity stuff. I'm sure there's Hedron stuff. But you know, doing huge market sells isn't something that it's known for doing. So you know what I mean? There's a thing there. So you can just look at historical, whoever owns those coins, what have they done with Hex, and then what are they going to do with PulseX? I mean, you can speculate they'll probably do something similar. So I'm cool with it. And
after that,
I run my validators. There's another thing called Tellor technology. They're going to fork, like Liquid Loan is forking Tellor for a native Oracle for PulseChain. So that's the thing I'm also doing education on.
We'll get into that just a minute. Yeah, I want to talk about that too. Just a minute though. I want to on this. Actually, I mean, I was just going to say, I have one more question I want to throw up there before we get into Tellor. But I was going to say that hopefully after the OA gets their 10,000x, they'll start saving lives with longevity research when they have billions and billions and billions of dollars. Never know.
Yep.
Connor, I'm going to be in Europe in 20 days. Should I bring my laptop, Gamma?
So you should. Somebody asked me that question earlier, and I take my laptop everywhere I go. So you know, it's always possible that Mainnet could happen at some point, and so be prepared for that to happen at some point, because I believe Richard gave his warning that Mainnet could like literally drop at any point in the future.
Did you say that?
In a tweet, he gave a couple warnings a couple weeks ago saying you've received your warnings about Mainnet. So Mainnet could happen whenever it happens. So
I see new warnings every day on Twitter saying it could launch anytime. So if you're not on Twitter and you'd like to be reminded, that's a great place to get your hopes up every single day. But yes, still to the root of the question, I mean, to the root of the answer though, it could launch anytime. That's true.
That's one more question. I get asked it constantly, and I'm like, he already said, like, so the fork of the block height, when is that going to be? I don't know. So, you know, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, right? And then,
go ahead.
Yeah. So, like, when does the block height happen? I don't know. Could be in the past. Could be in the future. Mainnet could launch whenever it launches, and to be prepared for it is basically what the answer is.
There could be a delta between launch and when your copies,
there is going to be, right? Like, it's required to have some type of delay between the block height, like the day the day of the actual fork, and when you get access to it. Is there that delta is what you're talking about? And so, I mean, it's not going to be months, but because the V4 was like January, right? pre withdrawal available pre Shanghai January, and then the current one's going to be post Shanghai. But then what day is that? Right? Everyone will find out whenever it goes live.
See, everyone keeps saying it's not a snapshot. It is a snapshot. I'm like, there's so much overlap with these.
Well, what's a snapshot? Okay, so a snapshot, in my opinion of what a snapshot is a snapshot is a subset of the database, which would be a contract. So you do a subset, which would be like a snapshot of the hex contract on Ethereum, the database, the blockchain. A fork, this is a fork. So you're forking the entire database that's Ethereum, and then Ethereum continues on, right? So there's a fork in the road at some point, and then that block height is chosen. PulseChain forks off of it, go in its own direction with custom code, right? Chain ID 369, and then Ethereum continues on. That's a fork.
Isn't a fork essentially a snapshot? Like, isn't a fork essentially a snapshot at the new start of the new network? Is that basically?
Well, I mean, but I'm going to use a more technical understanding of what a snapshot and fork is. So, like I said, a snapshot is if you take a contract on the actual blockchain and you take a copy of that, a snapshot of that, like token balances, state of that contract, then for me that's a snapshot. Right. Now, but a fork is the entire chain. Now, people are using these terms interchangeable, so I don't really make it I don't make a big deal about it or whatever.
Well,
but you're confusing two different terms.
The actions are different, but effectively it becomes the same because the snapshot is a fork.
So what everyone should be using is it's a fork, but everyone wants to use snapshot because they're confused on what a snapshot is.
Yeah.
Right. So you're like, okay, no problem. See, I have my own personal definition of what a snapshot is. So what I said, like I said before, is like I don't make a big deal about when people say snapshot, I know what they mean. So why am I spending 5 minutes arguing with somebody? Because it doesn't really matter. Because my personal understanding of what a snapshot is doesn't it doesn't serve me and it doesn't serve my interest to try and define for you what a term is. If you use the word snapshot, but I know what it is, if you want to use snapshot instead of fork, then I'll roll with you and I'll just use your term because that's the term you use for what's happening. And it's easier for you to maybe we can just move on with the actual question.
Yeah.
But like I said, I believe a snapshot is if a subset of the database is saved for some purpose, that's a snapshot. If you're taking the entire database and you're creating a new network off that fork, then that's a fork, right? Because that's what PulseChain is doing. We're taking a block height. We have a new client that's custom code. That's a code fork of Erigon, Geth, Lighthouse, Prism. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Change the chain ID, and then now it moves off in its own history, and then Ethereum moves off in its own history. But the fork.
Yeah, technically.
But if you want to use snapshot, I know what you mean, so it's fine.
There's these holy wars around. It's not a snapshot; it's a fork. And I'm not saying you, but in general,
because I think it's a worthless. I don't think it's even worth anybody's time.
It doesn't change anything other than if you believe it's a snapshot, then you think, oh, there's a predetermined date. But then a fork, essentially, the actions are different, of course, as you just explained. But essentially,
a fork is a predetermined date, so it's defined. So when
a fork is like a natural snapshot, I would say. The actions are different, but it turns out to be it's naturally continuation of a certain point. So whether you saved it as a snapshot and meant to continue or not, you're still continuing from a different
snapshot. You're going to take a snapshot of a contract at a block height,
right? And different chain ID.
And with the fork, you're going to you have the block height of the entire database, and then now you're moving off in new history post that block height,
right?
All right, but you're still taking a block height. It's still a block height is still a thing.
I agree. Everyone out there fighting the holy war of snapshot versus fork. Conclusion is it doesn't really matter. Technical level, it is a fork, but it doesn't really matter.
If you use snapshot with me, I'm not even going to say anything. I'll just roll with it.
Well, you're on autopilot anyways, because you're like, I only answer I only have so much consciousness, so you're only going to be.
Well, yeah,
like,
we were talking about like I'll give anybody 5 minutes, but then if I'm not giving people randomly that are in my DMs an hour of my time to walk them through some complicated thing. I'm like, because I don't have time for that. But I'll give anybody minute, 5 minutes, answer their a couple questions, and then hopefully I can direct them to a resource where they can learn more about the problem. So what I prefer to do is I'll answer the questions. If it seems like that's not enough, then I'll go to the internet and I'll actually find a document that you can continue learning about whatever it is you're talking about. Either it could be a video that I've done on my Substack. I'll go to Google and I'll actually go to the Ethereum document that talks about the subject you're talking about. I'll go find a guide. It could be like a DigitalOcean guide on like how to configure something that you're talking about on DigitalOcean. Just something that you can go learn, and then you go to the internet, go to Google, and then you're probably going to come back to me with other questions, which is fine. I don't mind answering questions. But doing like a 30-minute walkthrough, like in DMs, is like something I don't want like doing at all. I'd prefer actually walking people through on video, like Zoom calls, is actually easier, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking of questions, one more before we move on to the Tellor oracles. Daniel says, is there any difference between running one validator or multiple validators on the same machine?
The amount of resources you need on so the base machine for like one validator is, say, like the bare minimum is like 32 gigabytes of RAM. Say 8 core, 6 core CPU is fine. 2 terabytes of SSD, hard drive space. That's like the bare minimum you need to run a validator. And that's if you have like one validator or like 100 validators. Now, the load on your system, if you're running like 100 validators, so maybe you want 64 gigs of RAM, maybe you want some more CPU. Because 100 validators, that's quite a lot of money. So you might want to invest a little bit of that money into running decent hardware. But you can run on the base system, the bare minimum, just to function. You could run 1, 10, 20 validators on that for sure. No problem. Down the road, say like in 2025, bull market, PulseChain is the most popular thing that's ever existed. You're probably going to want something better than the bare minimum because your computer probably melted by then. So you probably already bought a new computer, which is fine, right? So... but most systems, most people are not going to be running hundreds of validators. Although I've talked to people who said they're going to run hundreds of validators, and I know people who are running hundreds of validators. But that's just because in the space I'm in, and I'm in, I don't know. I've been around.
Yeah.
And they ask me questions. People ask me my opinion and what's my system? Hey, this is how many validators I'm running. What system should I give? I'm like, and if you're running hundreds and hundreds of validators, then you're like, okay, well, maybe you want to spend a little bit extra money and get like
Big Poppy, get
something that's
system.
like you go, like the company that I like to recommend. It's not a referral or anything. It's not, I don't get any money from them. It's called System 76. It's a computer that I run my validator on. It's running great. For $2,000, you can get, say, 64 gigabytes of RAM. What is it? 8 or 10 CPU, 2 terabyte, right? $1,800, $2,000 desktop with fans where you can change up the RAM. You can change out parts if you need. So like the base system. And then if you're running hundreds and hundreds of validators, then maybe you're running 64 gigs of RAM. So like I could run on Goerli, I was running 176 validators on 64 gigs of RAM, and it worked fine. Right. But if you're running like 200 on mainnet, and this is Goerli testnet, so it could mess up, and I wasn't really worried. Maybe you're running 128 gigabytes of RAM. Maybe you're maxing out your CPUs, right? But you don't have to go overboard on the thing, right? 4 terabytes of SSD, because if you have 4 terabyte of hard drive, like a single hard drive is 4 terabytes, then you can run Erigon if you wanted to. It's just 2.6 terabytes. Or you can run Goerli. It's fine. You're probably going to run Goerli, or not Goerli, Geth. And that's going to be less than a terabyte. So 2 terabytes of hard drive SSD gives you less 900 gigabytes for the Geth Lighthouse database, and then every day you add, a gig or whatever to it, and then now you have enough room for a couple of years of space, right? You don't have to upgrade your system right away, but 32 gigabytes of RAM. I recommend 64 if you're buying the system, and that just gives you the ability to have a little bit extra RAM. So in a couple of years from now, your system is able to keep up with like the load on the network. But although it's not required, right? You can use 32 gigs of RAM and it'll work, especially with using just Geth. Because technically 16 gigs of RAM works with Geth. That would be like the absolute bare minimum. If you want to run Lighthouse, Prism, and Geth, you're not doing it with less than 16 gigs of RAM. You could run Geth with 8 gigs of RAM, but you don't have any room for anything else. And we require 2 clients, not 1 client. So you got to have 8 gigs of RAM for Geth, and then you have to have the extra for the system, and then you have to have the RAM for Prism or Lighthouse to function. So 16 gigs of RAM would be like the absolute bare minimum. And that's probably, that would work. Like if you owned it already and you're not buying it just to that, and you actually have it in the corner and it still works, then you can probably use it temporarily until it doesn't work anymore, and then upgrade your system. But I'm totally not recommending that level of a RAM. Like, you know what I mean? Unless you're a person, I've talked to people who are like, okay, I'm going to put this on a refrigerator and try and get it to work. I'm like, you go, boy. You put this on a GE refrigerator and let me see how well you do a validator, because I'd love to see that. But I'm not recommending that people put their validators on GE refrigerators, right?
I'd rather overpay and have a little bit better and not have to worry about, is something going to go down one day or whatever. I wouldn't use a used computer. I wouldn't do 16 gigs of RAM. I'm running more than one validator on testnet, and it's only using not even 9 gigs out of 32. But it's like, and that's not syncing. When it's syncing, of course, it's using a lot more. But during normal operation, it only uses around 9 gigs from what I've seen. But if you're trying to do the minimum on everything, like, what do you want your money printer to go down? Like I don't want to worry about that. I don't want to spend my time trying to fix stuff, and I could have just invested more in the first place and not have the problems.
Yeah. So you're talking about being down. Here goes in the penalties. So for V4, the inflation was adjusted to reflect. So there's 1 million times more tokens, 1.2 million times Pulse, right? There's 32 ETH required, 32 million PLS. So 1 million times more tokens. So the inflation needed to be adjusted by basically 1 million times. You get your rewards, and then off the top is burned, deleted 25%. So we've, you know what I mean? The devs, client devs, whatever, have adjusted the PLS you get to equal basically what you get if you were an Ethereum dev, right? They just increased the number by 1 million times. And then before you get it in the contract, for the inflation, 25% is cut off the top. And then now you get credited your amount. So that's where the 25% burn comes from. So it's not in unit value, but as like a percentage, right?
Yeah.
Normalized value, 25% is taken off the top, and that's what you get credited. So whatever you see in the contract for your voucher, that's what you're really going to get. That 25% has already been cut off the top, which is great because that means it's less inflation, right? That we have to overcome to be net deflationary.
Well, I was going to ask about that too. How does that change? So if we do the that part 1000x, does that change the game theory, the tokenomics with PulseChain if validators get rewarded that much more? Because isn't that
well? So you right here. So here's some things. So you have the inflation is increased. There's a 25% burn that I just talked about in the inflation given the validators cut off the top, right? Not in the fees. EIP 1559 fee burning still happens.
Mm-hmm.
The GUI that you pay, the beats in PulseChain we call beats, is the same thing as GUI. So just right. As I use them, I actually use both terms so people understand what I'm talking about. So the GUI or beat that you pay per transaction could go up like it went to over 200 this week. It could go to 1,000, go to 100,000. But the price of each PLS, because there's so much more supply, is so small that we could have 1,000 beater GUI gas if blocks are full, and the price per transaction would be way less than what it would be on Ethereum. You're talking 10, 100 times less than what you pay on Ethereum. But these huge burns are happening because the way gas is, it's oversimplified, but it's like the amount of GUI times the unit price of a contract call. So like say the average contract call is 250,000 units times the GUI paid. And then there's some other math in there that I don't want to go into, but I'm saying it's a function of how much GUI you pay is how much gets burned, how much the validators get in rewards, the tip that you get is right. It depends on how much demands in the network. So are people tipping for the transactions to get put into the mempool and to get validated or not? Right. All those are different variables based on like demand of the blockchain. So at say like 40, 50,000 validators. So PulseChain is probably gonna have like 10 times less validators than Ethereum. So even at say 40,000, 50,000 validators, PulseChain has like 76% less inflation. Like, you know what I mean? The total supply is increasing at 76%, 80% less.
Yeah.
Like the number that's being quoted is 76%. But that's at like 40,000 validators or 45,000 validators, like around there. So there's less inflation. The GUI, the beats that you pay is going to be higher because the token supply is so much lower that people will be bidding up the GUI to get into the blocks. So you could easily have 100 GUI beats per transaction. Like this week was 200, and people were just like paying it like it's nothing because the price of each PLS is so small that it's a very, very, very tiny number, right? It's still very, very cheap. So they're bidding up the price, and that price could go up to 10,000, 100,000. Now, of course, you'd have to look at the price of PLS, but PulseChain has a huge amount of demand, like the blocks are full. And I know there's particular projects out there that like to fill up blocks of blockchains, right? I don't want to name them, but it doesn't have a great chart, but it does on every chain. It fills up the blocks, like 90% of the blocks. They're paying gas fees. So that's going to drive up the price. That's going to give validators rewards. It's going to burn a lot of PLS. Going to drive up the price of beats, to their 100, like their 1,000, maybe their 5,000, maybe 10,000, whatever the price is. That's the market, right? Depends on the demand. And that's going to burn PLS. So it's very likely, well, it will at one point in the future, depending on how much demand there is, and in PulseChain, be net deflationary because there's less inflation happening overall because there's less validators, because the total number of inflation per year is a function of how many validators there are. PulseChain launches at 4,096. Community validators come on board. Like right now, there's like 5,250, right? So and then there's going to be 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 validators, however many they are. Those are all community validators, including myself, including you, everybody. So as the number of validators increases, the total amount of supply that's created in the whole network goes up, but the reward as a percentage goes down, right? So your share of the inflation is very high now. At like 5,000 validators, it's in the 30% range or whatever. And then as more validators come on, then that goes down to hopefully get around 3, 4, 5%, which would be basically like Ethereum, right? But it could be like 10%. Like at what percentage? It just depends on how many validators there are. Because we're incentivizing the validators to be online. So if you have a 32 million PLS and that incentive is very juicy for you, then maybe you lock up your 32 million PLS, become a validator, get your share of that inflation, And then you still own that 32 million PLS. Like, withdrawals are going to be active, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, they're gonna be active. We're not waiting years for withdrawals. Ethereum already has withdrawals. Now, obviously, when is that going to happen? Well, I'm sure Richard will tweet about that when that become a thing that he wants the community to know. But
Yeah.
it is a thing that's going to happen on mainnet. It is a thing that's going to happen on V4. It's only a matter of time. So that's not even a cost. That's hopefully people were going to hold on to the PLS anyway. So why wouldn't you just run it a validator and get a little bit of get your share of that inflation, and then you're holding the PLS anyway, right? So
yeah. Well, so the ideal is the first being early as a validator before there's 40K. You're gonna get a lot better APY, make a lot more fees, stuff like that, and then hopefully over time, once we get a ton more validators, the APY goes down. But why would you stick in the system? Maybe the PLS price is high, and you even at a smaller APY, you're happy to earn that. That kind of the ideal, you think?
yeah, so it's 32 million PLS. So I mean, if you have 20 or 30,000 validators, that's a huge amount of PLS that's taken off the market, out of circulating supply. I mean, technically it's still in circulating supply, but it's like it's there locked in the contract, earning you revenue, right? So I mean, so that's always that's a great market dynamic that obviously everybody knows about. But it's mostly retail, right? Like I said earlier, is like if there's 135 trillion ish tokens on the market, 90% of that is the OA, right? 10% ish, 8%, whatever percentage you want to think it is retail. Those are the people who are actually community validators. So there's only so many validators that could even be in existence from the community. So you're talking 10 times less validators, meaning there's more rewards for the validators as opposed to Ethereum validators, right? So it's a little really juicy incentive to run a validator, to lock up your tokens, to receive that inflation. And when withdrawals are available and you have your withdrawal address actually activated, right? When you create your deposit, you should have it's called the ETH1 _ withdrawal address. And when you create your deposit, when you create your validator keys, you should set that in the stake and deposit CLI so that it's set already. So when withdrawals are available, the way it works, and there's an article all about withdrawals, the network sees that your validator has already set the withdrawal address, and it just goes through all the validators that has that withdrawal address set, and like apparently funds you, like gives you your PLS at some interval, and just rotates through all the validators that have the withdrawal set, and that's after withdrawals are available, right? So I read that article from Ethereum talking about withdrawals, and I was like, that's very interesting. So it doesn't even look like you have to claim or do anything. I mean, you would need to do a withdrawal if, say, like sign a transaction to actually deactivate your validator and then actually remove the 32 million PLS. But what it appears, and obviously withdrawals are not active on PulseChain, but as long as you have this withdrawal, it's sort of ETH1 _ withdrawal address is the flag. When you create your validator keys, you have that set, and then when withdrawals are active, then you start receiving your inflation in your wallet. And then so you could use that inflation to, I don't know, you could sell it, you could build up your PLS in there, and then fund more validators, compounding your validator stake, right? Which is very interesting. And so you've effectively created a revenue business. You're a validator now, and you're getting your revenue every day, every week, whatever amount. So you have a revenue generating asset, right? Activity, I would call it, for your own work, right? Nobody else is doing work for you. You're doing your own work, creating your own rewards, and receiving compensation for that, which is very nice.
I think it's gonna be fun times as a validator, for sure.
Yeah.
Just so many comments about it. So to be clear for everyone too, what would you call is it fork date? So people, is it fork date?
Well,
The
it's a
date,
block height.
block
I mean,
height. I feel like nobody knows what that means.
The block
though,
height is the block number of the 17,400,000 blah blah blah. That's a block height. Every 12 seconds on Ethereum, a new block is created, and then that block is actually tied to a Unix timestamp. So, like, the block happens, then it's tied to a Unix timestamp. That's the time of the block. So I use block height because it's a measure of time, right?
It's probably the best way.
Every
But
12
when you say
seconds.
block height, the problem is getting people to understand. Again, I don't think there's like it does when it happens. Snapshot, fork, whatever. But like when you say block height, I don't think anyone knows what that means either. So it's like, okay, is that the snapshot date? And it's like, is it the fork date? Is it the? It's like, well, it's the time when you get your coins and the network separates itself.
So you have a 24-hour period. That's a fork. I mean, so the block height will be like the day that. So it's basically like the block height that's chosen is on a day. So you technically have a fork date, but that's a 24-hour period. But you're talking about an actual, like, this hour, this minute, this second, this block was created. And then now, like, after the fact, there's actually like a time for that. But then obviously it's a block height. Like you're referencing, technically you're just referencing like the number, and then you have to go look up when that date was, when that time was that block was created, which isn't a problem. But you're saying, like, what day is the block height? Like, what day is that? I don't know. Find out when Mainnet comes out. Right.
We all find out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I've been monitoring the certificates being issued, and that gave me a heads up a couple days before testnet v3 and testnet v4, and maybe mainnet. I've been watching that, DNS entries and stuff, and liquidity being pulled. There's a bunch of different indicators you can use to try to get that spidey sense.
It's a process. It's not like an instant everything's on. It's like there's a lot of moving parts when you're standing up with these networks. So there are many clues that are out there if you know where to look to say, hey, some things are happening here. Maybe we're very close, but unless you know where to look, right? And for the most part, people who actually know aren't going to say anything. It's a secret. Richard will tell everyone when it happens. Or
he didn't tell us about V4 though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that happened. So, you look at the GitLab repos and go into the Pulse dev chat, and when a legit PulseChain dev who's known says a thing is live, then like believe them, I guess, is like the thing. Because when V4 went out, like one of the devs actually posted in the Pulse dev chat talking about how the client's released, and then everyone started arguing about, well, Richard didn't tweet it. It was like, well, I mean, you kind of look in the GitLab and you see that it's live, and when you can run the code, that's a pretty good indication that it's live.
Bro.
You don't really need Richard to tweet it at that point, but that's a technical understanding. Yeah. So, and these are people who are not looking in the GitLab, so I understand that.
Are you front running Richard right now? Are you front running Richard with all this like publicly available information?
Yeah, I've totally given a lot of it public info. I'm being as vague as possible here. So, and it's funny actually.
Tellor Oracle. Tell us about Tellor.
Yes. So there's another service that you can. So here's the thing. So to be a validator takes 32 million PLS, which could be somewhere 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, depends on the price of PLS, right? One day it's gonna be tens of thousands of dollars to be a validator. You know what I mean? Hoping.
Wow.
Right. I would like for that to happen. So. We'll see. Speculating on price there a little bit. So there's another service that's forking Tellor oracles on Ethereum. It's not called Tellor. The Liquid Loans team is forking Tellor technology, say like the technology that's powering a couple different EVM networks on Ethereum called Tellor. It's similar to Chainlink, but it's different. It's not the same. So they're forking that technology, creating a new service with a new native token. And the way that service works is so there's a product called Fiat. It'll just launch on Ethereum. It'll be on PulseChain. Liquid Loans Power City, their liquidity fork, like really the liquidity forks are the ones I'll talk about. They require a oracle, a price oracle, to tie the ratios between two things to a US dollar price. So if the PulseX exchange, right, the DEX, PulseX DEX has ratios, those are prices between different assets, derived a USD price because, say, Pulse is tied to Ethereum on Ethereum, and then now Pulse has a price, and then that comes back over to PulseChain. Everything on PulseX is tied to Pulse, basically. So then now everything that's on PulseX has a price ipso facto, because you have to derive a price because everything else in the chain has a price.
Right.
So you can derive a US dollar price for everything. Now you can aggregate those prices. You could call directly PulseX to get it, which is kind of the default because it's the native DEX for a Pulse chain. But you should probably get your data from other places. So, like, say, Pulse and Hex and all these other assets that are on Pulse chain, not Ethereum, but on Pulse chain, they're going to be on centralized exchanges. The price feeds are going to be aggregated through, say, CoinMarketCap, even though on that one, CoinGecko, a little bit like that too. But these websites exist and they have prices, and they aggregate exchanges. So the prices that are the assets that are on PulseChain are going to be traded on centralized exchanges. They're going to be traded on other dexes, not just PulseX, right? Other dexes are going to exist on PulseChain. So there's a service called Tellor oracles that will take all those different data points, do like a time weighted average price, and then there's a central party, an oracle service that can like aggregate that price, and then now your app is getting the price aggregated across all these different applications and these different services for your application to do whatever it is that it does, right? It's an oracle. What I like about it is the fact that if you want to be a teller reporter, then the price point is much, much lower than, say, being a validator. Even though if you can be a validator, please be a validator. You know what I mean? But if you can't be a validator and you only have a tenth, if you only have like 3 million PLS, then hold that PLS. Awesome, good job. But if you really want to run a service on PulseChain, then maybe you want to run an Oracle service. You can run a server. It's like a lightweight web server, 8 gigs of RAM, VPS.
Could you have it on your own validator server? You run both at the same one?
I mean, I wouldn't run it. Like most things, I'm gonna say, like, if you're running a validator, you shouldn't do anything else with that computer. And if you're running a validator, you should run it in your house and be as decentralized as possible. Now, this Tellor reporter, you're not running that from your house. The latency wouldn't do that great. And the way this service works is you have a application, liquid loans, right? Because they're forking it, right? So liquid loans, they want the price of PLS, the US dollar price. So what they do is they call the Tellor service, whatever it's called, and the first Tellor reporter that can get that price from all these different sources and then give it back to them gets the fee. And then all the Tellor reporters are in the cloud. Hopefully they have very little latency. So you're going to be you want to be in a data center that has really great internet, that's low latency. It's like, like a web server, right? If you want to have a really nice website, then when somebody goes to your website, they can't wait a minute to get returned the website, right? You want it to be fast enough in the milliseconds that it's basically instantaneous for them. The same thing for Tellor services, right? So you run it in a data center. It could be in Europe, Asia, the US. I mean, basically wherever you think your customers, the people who are going to need the prices are, then you can try and put them as close as possible. Or different data centers some are better with latency and some are not. Like if you have it's pretty basic stuff, but so if your customers, the 90% of your customers in the US, and then you're not going to put your servers only in like Beijing. I mean, well, not Beijing, but like Singapore or like India. Like DigitalOcean has a data center in like India. Like the latency is going to be in the hundreds because it's like all your customers are in the US and then your servers in India, right?
Right.
It's like on the other side of the globe. So you probably want to like put that in the US. There's like a
We have the technology, Em. We have the technology to communicate across the globe. They have pipes underground.
Yeah. Well, latency is the amount of time it takes, right? A call to be received and then response.
Yeah.
So, you can although it does technically work, maybe you want to put your server, your telereporter in an area where most of your customers are. That would probably be in the US, maybe in Europe, wherever. So you can figure that out. It's totally up to whoever wants to run that, but it's a decentralized service that's going to be all over the world. And then you're effectively competing with the other telereporters to be the first one to give an accurate data point. And then if you give an inaccurate data point, then the other telereporters on the network can say, hey, I challenged that. And then there's a whole process on how to challenge that. And if you were actually, in fact, right, then you get the fee or part of that fee as opposed to them. And, there's an arbitration, like an automated arbitration process where you're challenging these data points. So what you need to do is basically run the configuration for these is already done for you. You basically just load in the pairs of you could run multiple say like USD PLS, USD Hex, USD PulseX. You can run all those in the same server, but then you're going to be staking this token like multiple times. And then you're going to be providing a feed that is like for multiple assets. And another thing about it is you stake multiple times. So how you can run a validator, and you can run 100 validators on the same computer. We can do the same thing with a telereporter. You can run multiple assets, but then, so if you stake one time, say like 10 of these tokens, and you stake only one time, that means you can provide a price feed, like a request only once every 12 hours. But then if you do 12 times, that'd be like 120 tokens. Then you could provide a price every hour. And then you could, obviously, the more times that you stake in increments of 10, then the more often you can provide a price feed, which means that you're going to be able to, when there's a call, to provide the price, get that fee, and then you'd be more likely to, receive the fees, right? As opposed to like everybody else. So, yeah, it's kind of like mining, but you're not really mining with SHA-256. You're just available. And if you have really good latency, then you can see the call first, call out to the places that you are getting the feed from, package the feed, and then give it back to the end user. And then hopefully you're the first one, and then you get the feed. And that's only possible if you staked and you have the ability, like you've staked enough times, or you're open to providing the price in the first place.
It sounds like you're publishing.
You're publishing a price on demand. And so if you stake enough times and you're available to publish the price, then when someone needs the price, then you can just publish it, and then you can get the fee. Is basically how it works. I published in the chat, I put a link about it. Let me see if I can do it again here. Yeah, here. So I did a 30-minute overview about it. I'm providing education on obviously validating, which is the thing that we talked about. Like I talk about that all day, but then I'm also providing education on how to be a telereporter when it is live on PulseChain V4. I'll do a tutorial on it. I'll run my own on testnet. And then it'll also be a thing where I can walk people through how to do it, which, although it's really, really simple, it's a Python program. You install it. Just like being a validator, right? You have to install some clients, get it configured in the right way. And with being a validator, you have to deposit a certain amount of tokens. As a telereporter, you load it with an address, right? With a private key that signs the transactions, similar to being a validator, because the validator key is a private key, and that's how you can sign transactions so you can publish blocks. Very similar for telereporting, or really any kind of like validator, like a bridge validator or a telereporter or a blockchain validator. They use private keys to sign transactions to prove that they, have the ability to sign. And then obviously there's the if they do a bad job, there's slashing for validating, slashing for being a teller reporter, and like that. So yeah, so you have to set up in a certain way. Security is a problem, right? You have to worry about security, so you have to make sure that you set it up with SSH keys, set it up with the right firewalls. The service that you go through, obviously your user, the website that you go through, which a lot of people don't think about, is do you have 2FA? Right? Are you using a strong password? Maybe you use an email that you don't use for anything else, so that somebody can't just break in through the dashboard and then take over your server and then do, I don't know, bad things. I mean, whatever they can do with a validator. Which would be, if you're running a validator in the cloud, those would be the same concerns, right? Firewalls, access to the actual server, access to the dashboard to create the server, because obviously there's built-in mechanisms to regain like access to servers through the dashboard, like DigitalOcean, right? You can reset the password to get access, because sometimes, well, it's kind of a common thing. I've done it myself, where you start the firewall, but you forget to allow 22.
Yeah.
And then you lock yourself out of the server, and you're like, oh crap. And then you go through their dashboard, the DigitalOcean dashboard, and then there's a process where they have to confirm that you are in fact you. They send you back a link to your email. And then what they do is they manually reset your server to allow you to be able to get into it.
Through 7 selfies and blood samples later, and you get access to your server.
I mean, you've already done that before, but you know what I mean? So, I mean, those are access. You have to worry about these types of things. Because if you're running a validator, it could be a PulseChain validator or even a Tellor reporter. Maintaining access and security of your server is important. These do have private keys on them, signing keys. The Tellor reporter is going to have an amount of PLS on it. It's going to have the staking token on it. So it stakes on your behalf. It signs with PLS gas, right? So you don't want somebody to like break into your server and then like steal. You're not talking about hundreds of millions of dollars or anything, but thousands of dollars that you have on there, right?
With the validator, it's if they steal your signing keys, and the worst case that can happen is you get slashed. Like they can mess with that type of stuff. But with the seed words is what you really need to protect, because that is your withdrawal key is derived from your seed words, and that it gets access to your funds. So that's why you create a separate machine.
Actually, this is a very important thing. When you create your validator keys, what you should do, and what I'm recommending people, is like, say you have a new computer. It should be a new computer. You should like have a reformatted computer that's never been used for websites. You've really basically never done anything with it. You get the staking deposit CLI code that's from the PulseChain.com GitLab. You download that from the internet, right? You've got to get it from the internet, and you update it, right? You have to do updates to make sure that it has the correct software. So it's got to have Python on it. It's got to have, so you're running like an update script, right? There's a requirements text that's inside of that, where you have to update the requirements, the dependencies is another word for it, to like, so that your computer has everything it needs to run the actual script to create the validator keys. So you get the requirements, you install the deposit period CH file. This is the actual script that will create your validator keys. And then your computer has only ever been updated from the official repos. You've updated the dependencies that you need for it to actually function. And then when you actually run your validator to create your keys, you turn your internet off. However you unplug it, Wi-Fi, turn off. Like, you don't have any access to any internet at that point. And then the only program you even have on that thing is the stake and deposit CLI, especially for mainnet.
Yeah.
And then you run the program, create 1, 10, 100 validator keys. You run it. During that process, in that terminal, you get a 24-word seed phrase that you have to write down on a piece of paper. And then most all right, I don't like this, but this is like the only time you're ever going to hear me say, then you have to type this back into the computer, which is, if you're talking about hardware wallets, you're never going to do that. Hardware wallets,
Right.
you generate them on the hardware wallet, you add them back on the hardware wallet. Well, there's no hardware wallet with validator keys. You're using the stake and deposit CLI program. So this is why it's so important that you have a computer that you've never used for anything else. You've never gone to the internet. You haven't downloaded a bunch of random programs. Like, the likelihood that you have a keylogger malware on this new computer that's basically like off the shelf with official software, updated from official sources, and you've only ever installed one program from PulseChain.com, the likelihood that there's any malware in your computer is so low that it's like, right,
Yeah.
you've
I mean,
mitigated all the issues of like maybe possibly having a malware keylogger on your computure.
Another good one I heard is a live CD. So just use a live CD
You could,
infirm.
yeah, USB. You have a USB stick that you log in with the USB stick, so it's a new install, but you could totally do that too. And I mean, you could do that with almost any computer too, because those install on Windows, Macs, whatever. You're installing from the USB, and you're doing the same thing. You're installing stake and deposit CLI. Nothing has ever been connected to the internet. You make sure the internet's turned off, and then you write the 24-word seed phrase on a piece of paper. No copy and pasting, no screenshots, like none of that stuff ever. Then you have to type it back into the program to verify that you wrote down all the 24-word seed phrase, because if you want to get your withdrawal keys, then you need that 24-word seed phrase. If you want to generate more validator keys, so if you generate one and then later on you want to generate 9 more, you should do it with the same seed. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Because otherwise you're going to confuse yourself, and now you're going to have multiple 24-word seed phrases, and it's actually just more likely you'll be confused, and you're like, which seed is what validator key? And then now you've just added a huge confusion for yourself. And what you don't want to have to do is you don't want to have to keep like spreadsheets of your keys. You know what I mean? Like, do you really want to keep a record like on your computer of like, and then maybe you accidentally leak private data because you don't know as much as you think you know. So to alleviate that, you should basically know you have 1 key, 100 keys, 10 keys, and then you have a 124-word seed phrase, and then you like, as part of that, you say, I have 10 keys, right? And then if you update more, your index would be 10, and then you're creating 10 more. And then you can put the new mnemonic, you can actually create more validator keys. It's actually very simple. And then we talked about it before, where you can do an interactive window where if you just do a period / deposit.ch new mnemonic, then they'll go through a process of asking you what language, how many keys. But if you use the command line and you use the flags, the chain, PulseChain testnet v4, how many validators, 10, then you can set this flag that's the -- ETH1 _ withdrawal _ address equals the Ethereum address. That's a hardware wallet. That is what I tell people is this address, this hardware wallet should never be used for anything ever, because you don't want it to be compromised. Because once you set it for the withdrawals, the rewards to be a validator, you can't unset it. You can't change it. So this is probably the most important wallet. So it should be a separate hardware wallet that you don't do anything with. You don't do DeFi. You don't do exchanging. You don't do anything. You basically only receive withdrawals, rewards, PLS rewards. And then if you want to use those PLS rewards for something, then you just move them out of that address into a different hardware wallet. And then now you're doing your DeFi, you're doing your trading, or whatever. But now you've minimized the likelihood that you will accidentally. Here's the thing: if you have a hardware wallet, what you could accidentally do is, like, if you're doing a bunch of DeFi, you could give some random contract spin permissions for your PLS, and now that address gets wiped. But now all your validator keys, all your validator rewards are going to that address. So if you've given this account spin permissions, then right, every time new PLS gets dropped in there, then some hacker just takes it from you. And so what you have to do is you'd have to go through the process of deactivating the validator, withdrawing. But now that 32 million PLS is going to that address, what's the attacker going to do? They're going to steal that 32 million PLS. You can't change the address. So you just screwed yourself because you didn't have a dedicated hardware wallet, a dedicated address that was only for rewards. So I'm telling you, just to, and your group, everybody that's watching this is incredibly important, especially if you're running one validator, if you're running 100 validators, doesn't matter. Set your withdrawal address when you create your validator keys. That'll simplify you getting rewards after withdrawals are available. Create a new ledger or treasure wallet that's only ever for rewards, and then never use that for anything else. And then just send the money out whenever you want to spend it. Like, it's super easy. And now you've mitigated the likelihood that some attacker is going to get access to that wallet, create spend approvals to spend that. And then when you get your 32 million PLS is now worth 10 cents each or what crazy amount. Now you know that when you get that withdrawn and deposited in that account, it's not instantly going to get stolen from you, which is kind of happening with this fork, right? A PulseChain. There's a lot of people who sacrifice from wallets that are now compromised. And the moment that the PulseChain fork is public, there's a high likelihood that they are going to get their money on PLS, on PulseChain stolen once again, because their money was stolen on Ethereum. And now if they don't beat that attacker to the RPC settings, to that address, to send their money, the PLS, PLSX, whatever tokens they got off of that address, then it's going to get stolen again.
You don't want to be the guy going to the Lambo dealership and you look at your wallet and it's gone.
Like, don't fund a scammer's Lambo 10th Lambo purchase, right? Like, you should buy your own.
Fund your own. Exactly.
Yeah. Fund your own, not some scammers. Because they already got 10.
Where can I sign the contract? I have the cash. Oh no, don't be the person who gets the PLS stolen.
It's pretty important. And that's not even like a scare. That's not even imaginary horrible. That's an actual horrible. That's happening to people every single day. And will happen to you if you do a bunch of DeFi in this wallet, and then there's going to be people who are going to be like, I had all my rewards stolen from my account because I gave, because of XYZ reasons. Yeah. Right. So don't be a statistic.
Last question before we wrap up. Jay Gold, curious how many big bugs need to be fixed. That's something you could have a pulse on. How far are we away from no comment on? I haven't seen a posting of that in Telegram for a while. I haven't seen the usual.
Yeah, I don't know. Richard's gonna post about any big deals. So some of the comments, some things that I can speak on is there's some the beacon chain right now. If you're pending validating, there's a lot of people who can't see that they're actually active, even though they're already active. If you look in the validator terminal window and you look at publishing attestations, then that means that you're live. The beacon chain Explorer maybe says you're still pending because it's not updated. Okay, so that's a thing that needs to be fixed. Now, is that a thing that's like, oh my God, that's the end of the world, we can't launch mainnet? Well, I don't know. That's not my call. You're right. I mean, there's nobody in this room that makes that call. But it would be pretty nice if you could you could have your beacon chain, your validator pending and then activated, and you actually tell that. That's kind of a big deal. I would like for that to be, fixed or working. People are working on that. Right.
Yes.
Then there is the gas estimation fixes that have happened recently that have been tweeted about. There's some other things. The bridge went active, right? So there's some people were complaining about some issues with the bridge, and obviously there's tweaks and stuff for the bridge to function because 24, 48, 3 days, 5 days after PulseChain goes live, the bridge is going to be live. So we all want that to function correctly, right? Although, I mean, the bridge is working. Validators are working. Mainnet, PulseX is working, right? I mean, limit orders aren't there, but that's not like limit orders can be added later. Like as long as you can do swaps, you don't like it's a feature, right?
Yeah. If you know how to do liquidity, you know, you don't really need limit orders. Like, you know,
you can add liquidity. You add liquidity pairs.
Yeah, you just gotta wait a little bit longer.
AMM bot does their deal, right? And so what needs to happen in the back end for the AMM bot? Well, I don't know, right? But it launched on V4, so tweak the bridge, tweak gas errors, some beacon chain, right? Like the biggest glaring problem that I see that I'm getting contacted about is the beacon chain not functioning correctly. Then I have to walk them through how to look at the validator output. Oh, you didn't even know that validator output was there. So go look at the validator logs. And then if it says publishing attestations, then that means it's functioning. Okay, great. The beacon chain is not like working correctly. Right. So, we can get that fixed. Right. Like,
so nothing critical, nothing big. Just, I mean, everything is functioning. Like everything is working. It's just
I'm running servers. I'm running every version, every pair of all the clients, and my servers are fine. The thing that I look for is can I run the clients and does the blockchain function? For me, the biggest thing. So when we went from V3 to V4, we fixed the inflation, right? So that was a big thing. So the reasoning, right? The reasoning for that is you could wait a month for the code to be ready, for there to be a fork of the V3 to implement the new inflation, or you could wait a week and just get it done on a V4. So like saving weeks of time on the road to mainnet seems pretty important. Peering was a big problem. So that got fixed from V3 to V4. So actually there was a problem with Geth originally, and then that got fixed for peering. So now if I start up new clients, then they get peers fine. Everything syncs up fine. Earlier today, I restarted. It was Prism Erigon. I restarted Prism Erigon from scratch earlier today, and it worked fine. 80 something peers, no problem. Going through the process of syncing up, awesome. I can do that with all the clients. So anybody who's running a full anybody who's running a validator should have no problem getting peers. I'm not doing any tricks. I'm just starting them up like a user would, and it's functioning correctly. I mean, for me personally, that's a bare minimum right there. Like if you can't get the clients to work without doing a bunch of tricks, then you need to like fix those so that when you start it up, it actually just works out the gate. So, but that's good now. Awesome. I love that. And then now some of these apps are problem, right? Like the Beacon Chain Explorer. I mean, that's not like the end of the world, but that would be pretty nice to have operation fixed, right? The beacon, the Block Scout Explorer. I mean, it seems to be working fine. I'm using it every day. Seeing transactions populate. So like awesome. PulseX seems to be working fine. Some gas estimation errors. They added they did the last kind of client update was adding like a 20% estimation buffer so gas would actually function correctly for some technical reasons that even I don't understand mostly. Because I'm not a blockchain dev, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I get the update and I understand it's a gas estimation error, but under the hood, what did they actually change? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they fixed that. So that seems to be working better for everybody. Nice.
So we're close. We're close, you think?
Yeah, I mean, but it seems like we're doing really well. Now, I mean, the one other question I get is like, is a block height happening or not? I was like, I mean, sometime. Richard's given his announcement a few weeks ago that like Mainnet could launch at any time. So, take the guy at face value on that one and see, when does Mainnet come out? When is the block height for the fork? I don't know. We'll find out when Mainnet comes. It's basically anytime after V4 launched, Mainnet could go live. Anytime after V4 launched, the block height could have been. Right? And we'll find out when Mainnet goes live. Whenever that happens.
Fun. Very exciting indeed.
Should be months though.
Shouldn't be months, you don't think? Yeah. 2024, I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, I mean, the 5137, it's on the table.
5,
that was my running joke for months and months and months. Was like, no problem. We'll launch on 5136. Like, no big deal.
Yeah. It's anyways, the chat. Sorry, I can't get to all the questions. I appreciate it. There's one from Jackson a little in here too, but we got to call this one.
Questions. I got it's 8:00, so I got a few more minutes. It's fine.
I've got to run though. It's the only thing. Dev Huey says wink twice of launching this week.
Yeah.
Oh, look at his eyes.
I do not.
He's purposely not blinking now. That's not natural.
Yep. I do not know when we're launching Mainnet. So,
awesome, man. It's been
your guess is as good as mine.
It's been an amazing conversation. Yeah, I'm guessing mid-May. I think I'm sticking with that now. I usually don't make predictions. I don't like to be wrong.
I mean, what day is it now? It's the 26th. So, like, the likelihood that Mainnet goes in, that could happen next month, I was like, I don't know. It's the 26th of April. So I don't know.
Did you already make the reservation at the Lambo dealership?
No, I'm more of a McLaren person, personally.
Ooh, nice.
Although I do not own a silver car, I've already chosen my brand. So, like, I have this nice. I don't own a Rolex either, but I do own this very nice Omega.
Ooh, Omega.
So it's a very nice Omega. I bought it a couple years ago in the middle of the bull market. Very nice Omega, and this at that point, Rolex didn't even have any watches on display. Like, everything was sold out. So like me getting a Rolex is kind of impossible. But Omegas are nice. They don't hold their value very much. They're not like an investment piece at all.
Yeah, everybody needs a nice watch. And a suit that makes you feel like $1 million or $1 trillion.
It's nice. Yeah. I love it, and it's not like an investment, so I just keep it forever.
That's good. Well, thanks so much for coming on, man. Excellent conversation. If anyone's missed part of it, you should rewind. #ReplayGang. Ton of information, a lot of technical content, all about PulseChain validating and Tellor, Oracle, and all kinds of cool stuff. But anyways, everyone,
I appreciate having me on.
Of course. Hopefully it won't be the last time. Where can people find you? Where can if they don't know where you are already?
You got my username up there now. So it's at Gamma DevOps on Twitter. And then I'm actually on like TikTok and stuff, but I don't post anywhere. So it's at Gamma DevOps chat is my Telegram chat where you can ask me. I have like a growing community of like 500 people that are interested in running validators and the technology. So it is not like talking about any tokens or anything like that. It's strictly technology, PulseChain, validator. Like over 500 people there in Gamma DevOps chat on Telegram. Twitter, Gamma DevOps. My Substack is Gamma DevOps Substack.com. That's all my educational videos. So I have, you can subscribe for free. You can become a paid subscriber. And like, it just keeps me motivated to publish content. On that platform, I have a YouTube channel that's, it's a youtube.com at Gamma DevOps. And so I just do live streams on that one. So all my educational content is on Substack. But every once in a while, like if there's anything that I want to chat about, or maybe potentially Mainnet goes live and I want to go on live stream and just kind of hang out with a bunch of people about it and to answer questions about it, then I do live streams on YouTube. So, I mean, but I haven't in a while, but I can at any time do a live stream. So you can subscribe to my YouTube, but mostly Telegram and Twitter.
Gotcha. You can do a live stream at any moment. Could do any moment.
I
with, like,
mostly just
PulseChain
come on
launch.
streams when I get invited like yours.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to have you back on at some point as well to talk more. Thanks again for coming on, man.
Cool.
Everyone out there, Scivive and 5555. We are
Awesome.
out.
Thanks, man.
See ya.